Patrons from around the world, welcome to the Fourth Industrial Revolution podcast, aka the IR4. We have an amazing guest today, Mr. Josh Auman, with, of course, your boy Brian Masterson, and I'm Jeremy Alexander Newsome. Today we're going to be discussing this guy's life, what he does as an entrepreneur, as a chief investment officer, COO, operations, just running, making magic happen. Talking about the future of music production, the future of concerts, where it's going, what's going to happen with that, technology. It's the IR4 podcast. All right, so Josh, tell us a bit about your day-to-day operations, man. This is because we're at your office, your zone. You booked this room for us today.
I did.
So tell us about that. What do you do, man?
Yeah, so really what I do on a day-to-day basis is I work with the other folks here who kind of execute our day-to-day tasks and work with them kind of growing as leaders, helping them plan kind of their days out, their weeks out, creating strategy for them to execute their day-to-day jobs, and then also working with the rest of the executive team on financial strategy for the company as a whole. So really overseeing two big things, the financial side of the company from top view down, and then also day-to-day strategy for everybody else in the company.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So how did you get started in this particular business or industry?
Well, I started working in clubs, honestly, in Seattle.
Hell yeah!
On the other side of the of the U.S.
Were you a bouncer?
I did that. I ran sound. I sold merch. Just anything that I could to make some money and be around it. And then from that, I kind of started touring as well, and just kind of got into that world. And
were you touring manager, or were you actually in the band?
Not TM. I was tour manager.
Okay.
I really liked the managerial side of things, the finance side of things, the planning, the organizing portion of that. But as I started dating my wife and wanted to get married and get off the road, so I slowly transitioned into more of an office side of things in downtown Nashville for a management company. That kind of then brought me to here. So it's been a little bit of a, kind of around the world and back.
Sure.
But kind of where I want to be now. So
when did you first get involved doing that?
That would have been back in 2006, 2007.
So 10 plus years in the industry. How have you seen it change since when you first got in?
Big time, really. A lot of it's just been the technology trend mixing with the live side has been pretty crazy. Obviously, been a part of the live entertainment industry for that long.
Yeah.
You've gone through some economic ebbs and flows, and it's been interesting to see that the live entertainment industry as a whole, I think kind of fits in like maybe even like the motion picture and the movie genre. Sorry, and the music genre in the sense of people just like to be entertained, even when things are terrible in the world. When things are at their worst, they just want to go and forget about it, and that happens. So a lot of times you'll see like money and stuff shift around from different genres or different types of things. But it's still there and it's still growing. And it's just changed, as far as what we use now versus before it was you go to clubs and it's just lights and sound, and now it's video and moving things and much more of an experience versus I think maybe just a concert.
Man, I got so many questions just from that.
I know. So do I.
But the first question I want to ask, just so I can get it out of the way, is I feel like anyone can be an artist now with this auto-tune and like you just get on this circuit board or whatever it is and you just make them sound good.
Right.
I mean,
Is that true?
I'm sure not everyone.
I wouldn't say everyone.
But there's a kid who yodels at freaking Walmart and now he's
I think the access to publishing your work is a lot bigger now. I mean, there's a
SoundCloud.
Well, even just social media in general. You can literally put whatever you do out in front of anybody. Where before, the right person had to show up at the right time to hear you, for you to actually strike a deal and get something done, was the way of the West for the longest time in music. And so now, people don't need that. They need like maybe $500 and some equipment and a room.
Yeah.
And they could actually put out something, whether it's good or bad, whether we like it or not. They can produce it to the public, and then the public gets to choose: do I like this and do I want to consume it?
Right.
Yeah.
Man, that's crazy.
So, do you ever? I mean, in your role, or do you have someone in your company at Label Live where you scout out these new talents?
Yeah, a lot of our sales team they will spend a lot of time at shows. A lot of showcases happen, especially in Nashville. Still, there's a lot of that goes on where you'll go to a showcase and it's like 10 artists, and you just go and you meet with their managers, you listen, you figure out, okay, well then who do I feel like would be a good investment for us? Especially on the live side of things, it's about their performance. It's about what do they make me feel as an audience member. I would say too, a big change is that it used to be, can you sing, can you perform live as far as your instrument with your band?
Right.
And now it's definitely shifted into the experience. Like, what do you bring besides that?
Or X factor.
Yeah,
interesting.
I would say that's the case. I think there are still musicians out there who get away with that because they're just unbelievably talented, and they can get away with that. I actually had this conversation with somebody a week ago, and I was comparing. I know this is really crazy, but I was comparing Adele to Katy Perry. And Adele is phenomenally talented. Incredible. And people will go watch her and spend a lot of money just to hear her sing, right?
Yep.
But people love to go to Katy Perry shows because it's an experience. It's fun, it's crazy, it's something they've never seen. They're banking on doing something they'll never get to do in their life again, right? That's why they go to the shows. So I don't want to detract from either one of them because they both are really great at what they do and how they do it.
Yeah.
They just do it very differently.
Yeah. Now, I've obviously being in Nashville, I've heard the good old boy system as far as the music industry goes. But with the advancement of the first disruptor was Napster, but then because of Spotify and YouTube and SoundCloud and all of these different apps or different music resources that are immediately available to the artist, how is that? I mean, is the good old boy system still prevalent and there where...
There's a good old boy system.
You never heard of
like
that?
you have to know somebody who knows somebody, and you have to be friends, and
there's
be
like
invited.
There's like a hierarchy type thing. Okay. It's an inner circle type thing. But and like you never heard of that?
No, I'm sorry.
You live in Nashville.
I'm so far out of there.
I was gonna say, but like, are you from the South? I can't remember.
Yeah, I am.
Okay.
I'm from the South.
So, but how? I mean, have you seen a big change into that overall landscape because of those new features, those nuances in technology for these artists?
I would say it's really genre specific. I would say that that country music still has some of that element to it, and it also goes back to the listener and the audience,
right?
Where the consumer, especially in country music, is still really big into radio, and that's a huge part of how they consume stuff is through the radio.
Yeah.
Where I would go into like hip hop or pop, where they're mostly consuming stuff digitally, so they're going to consume it from Spotify, Apple Music, all this sort of stuff. And so you don't have to bank on a radio guy or somebody playing your stuff and put it in rotation and syndication. And that's where you have to know somebody because that is an old school game.
Yeah.
And it's not a lot of new blood that comes into that world. A lot of the new blood is going into the digital side, but they still hold it. I mean, think about it. Every new car you buy still has a radio in it. Whether people listen to it or not, it's still there.
That's interesting,
10 years ago, people were talking about the radio wouldn't be around 10 years later because of all the digital revolution.
That's so true.
But it's still here.
Why is that? I mean, what's the niche for radio? Is it just because it's in cars?
It's convenience.
Is it a convenience thing?
Yeah, I think it's total convenience. I think you also have a car industry that doesn't know what to do if they don't put a radio in a car.
I
mean,
that's so.
Well, I mean,
that's so true, though. What would you do? I don't know.
I mean, I know what I would do. I know what I would do. I mean, you do like an aux plug and a navigate. I would take a navigation system,
beef it up,
or some sort of display system that I can use my phone. Because listen, our phone's way more powerful than anything they're going to put in the car.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm just going to use my phone and just display, and as long as I have something interactive to do that with, potentially, to put my Waze or Google Maps on there.
I also like radio because of the talk show element, NPR I love, and I love podcasts, but if you don't, you can just switch on a radio station and just off and go.
Yeah.
There is a convenience factor to it, I believe. But
no, for sure. And people said newspaper was going to die too.
Right.
Same thing. I mean, it's definitely dying.
Yeah.
Ish, but there's still that, like, people aren't going to just give that up.
Well, I think it's generational shifts too. I think you're really going to see. it's kind of crazy. We now are in a generation where I have a son that he will never know probably what a payphone is.
Yeah.
Like he has a toy that has like a little like handset receiver.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we don't have this at home. Like he only sees us with cell phones. He's not going to know what this actually is.
How about CDs too?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, cassette players. Yeah. I remember my parents all 8-track players, and I'm like, oh yeah, these CDs are sick though. You had a CD player and everything,
Blu-ray
and then it
out.
moved into like an iPod, and you're like, man, this device can hold like thousands of music, and now it's all on your phone.
Yep.
1,000 songs in your pocket. That was wild. So going into that realm, if you had an artist who had, let's say you had a path to pick between just becoming a great performer or a great artist, could someone get away with being a great performer and start being entertainment, maybe being an okay artist?
Yeah, I think so. I think because you're tapping into a different skill set and a different mindset. Not to take away from either party.
Sure.
Because I have artists on both sides, I would say, of that line that I love that are great performers as far as they can sing, like Chris Stapleton, who's a Nashville guy.
Yeah.
I listened to for a long time before he even blew up and loved his stuff, and he's a phenomenal performer. And he's just one of those guys who would just go out and play and sing.
Yeah.
And people will buy tickets to go out and hear him play and sing. And then even his live production is just lights and sound. I don't think he does much video. It's very, very simple.
Right.
But then, like, Katy Perry is a guilty pleasure with mine. Like, I use it just as far as her, and I would even say like someone like Beyonce. Not that she's not talented in her own right, but what you're looking at as far as just raw natural music ability versus her being a performer,
putting that work in.
But it's still a huge deal though, and and it has just as much validity as the other.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I feel like that you see nowadays a lot more money is generated from those performers versus than the true
actual
musicians.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of examples that, probably to the contrary, like Ed Sheeran. I know, like, sold out Wembley like 4 days or something like that. And it was just him and a guitar, something silly like that. Amazing. So I mean, like, there's anomalies in all this stuff, but I think you're seeing more of people want to be entertained and see something they've never seen. Why? Because they have access to so much stuff. They've kind of seen it all in some cases.
It's like, how good can you sing and play guitar?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So Josh, what are the logistics like? Like, so we're talking about performers and entertainment and concerts and things of that nature. I'm sure some venues already have like lights and sound systems and stuff like that, but from a logistical standpoint, like let's say Katy Perry's going from, and I see some of these tours, it's like night after night after night in different cities.
How they do that? How in the world do you guys, because that's what you do.
I feel like that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, logistically, there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, you have to get performers from A to B. You've got to get gear from A to B. Most of it is they book it in a way that you can get from one city to another in a certain amount of time. So that way you just load everything up on a truck or on your buses or whatever you're doing, and then you hit the next city. Optimal times like 8 hours, like max time is like 8 or 10 hours between cities. Especially when you get into bigger tours, it might be a little bit more than that. If you get outside of that, like U2 when they did, I can't remember the name of the tour, but like the big giant claw, they had 2 different sets. So they would actually they would go set up one, do the show, and then the next truck would already be going to the next location. So they actually had 2.
Interesting.
Mainly because the show took so long to build in the first place, and 2,
they had the budget.
Right. So I mean, so there's some of that goes on, but what most people do, even in your larger tours, they're going to have probably 8, 10, 12 semis full of stuff, and they'll head out and they'll hopefully book it in a way that they can get somewhere within 8 hours, 10 hours. They'll be out of the first venue at like 1 that morning. They'll be in the next venue at 9 the next morning. Load it in, set it up, tear it down, same thing next day.
Now, who pays for that? Like, does the artist pay for that? Does the recording studio?
The artist does. Okay. Typically, unless like there has been there's times that the record labels will pay for things. Usually, like more. Usually newer artists, the record label may throw in some money and their cash, but once you get to a certain level, it's the artist cash, and they usually have a group of people with their management that hire the production companies, the crew, and then the logistics and how all that works. They're going to pay for that, and they have a budget and then all that fun sort of stuff.
And that's what Label Live does. You make that experience happen.
Yeah, we do mostly we do video, lighting, and audio. And we do it, hopefully, and I think we do it very creatively. We really work with artists to try to figure out, what do you want your show to be? Not just, hey, what kind of equipment do you want, but what do you really want your show to be? How do you want to translate to your audience what it is you do or what you're trying to say to them? And then let's use the production equipment, do that for you, and create a design around that.
Interesting. So what other aspects of a concert are there other than lights and audio and video?
A lot. I mean, there's obviously the transportation side, getting stuff from point A to point B. Security is a big, especially with obviously recent things with Las Vegas. Security's changed. I mean, it was already, I would say, since I've been doing this since 2007, it's changed a lot since then. It's changed even more in the last couple years. That's a big part of that. And then there's the whole business side that goes with it. Ticket sales, merchandise sales. Yeah. That's another big thing that a lot of people don't think about when you go buy a tour T-shirt.
Yeah.
That money goes to the artist as well and helps fund the tour. And for a lot of people, especially I would say mid-level artists, like that's where they make the money. They may break even on the production gear with ticket sales, but what they make at the merch stand is what they put in their pocket.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So am I right to say that the new age of art and the new age of music is probably going towards like a freemium model where it's more like, let me get all of my music out there. People enjoy my music. They might not make a lot from the actual music sales themselves, but then the money that they make, they put on a show and experience, and that's the hub. That's where they make their money.
Yeah, that's completely true. It's probably about 5 years ago. I'm trying to remember the study that came out. But there was a big study done in the entertainment industry that talked about recording CDs and putting your music into albums versus live entertainment. And for the longest time, most people spent the majority of their time, which they still do, on records, and they made the most of their money off their records. They probably spent 90% of their time, and they made 90% of their money off of the record.
Really?
Yeah. Today, it's the opposite. They make almost 90% of their money in their live shows.
See, now I feel like that's unfortunate for someone who's an insane musician, but doesn't like to perform or know how to perform.
Yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah, and I think, it's one of those things that's really difficult, I think, to balance. And a lot we do this all the time. A lot of artists don't get that still. They tour, but they do what they've always done because they haven't evolved or changed, right? And that's what we try to work with, people all the time to go, hey, this is a different music industry than it was 10 years ago, and you're not making as much money, especially with Spotify and Apple Music. You're making pennies on the dollar, or half a penny on the dollar, where you were maybe making 60 cents on a dollar before.
That's actually a good segue into my question I had on my mind. It's Taylor Swift and who else? Is it Garth Brooks? Who doesn't put their music on?
Garth Brooks is one of them.
Spotify or
Jay-Z.
AC/DC was for they weren't on iTunes for the longest time.
Why is that? Is that just some type of rebellious type of thing saying we're not going to submit to this digitalized new wave? Or
I think there's a little bit of that, but I think for all of those artists, they know that they can make the money regardless. They're saying, hey, people are going to buy my music regardless if it's on Spotify or not. So why would I give away all of my money to Spotify? So instead, again, kind of go back to that before, and iTunes was actually pretty good. The only thing that hurt with iTunes is that people were able to buy individual songs and not a whole record. So they were paying $2 as opposed to $12 that you would have to buy on the CD, right?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of the larger artists, especially, were going with Spotify. We're now not making 60 cents on the dollar. We're making a half a cent per play or something crazy like that.
Oh, okay.
And so they're going, I would rather sell it myself or put it on my own platform because I know people are still going to come and buy it.
Yeah, because they have that magnitude.
That's that's like
you can
that's high level That's high level people, but for the lower tier guys, obviously you just want to get your shit out there.
Right.
Mid-level guys, that's a hard decision to make.
Yeah. And it's not a hard decision because that's the new way to get your stuff out there. Yeah, I mean, it sucks because you're used to getting, printouts of how much money you made off of album sales or even iTunes downloads, and now you get readouts from how many plays you get in Spotify, and your checks were $50,000 and now they're like $5,000.
Yeah.
For really like the same amount of, maybe there's a little bit more exposure, and that's where some of this has to change. Is you have to capitalize on my exposure. So I may not have made as much money in the actual like hard sell of the music, but my exposure is now where I may have had 50,000 people buy my record. I have now had 500,000 to 1 million people actually listen to it and play it. So now I've got to capitalize on that momentum in the live side of things or in a different form of marketing.
You ready for this?
Sure.
Jeremy gave me a little prelude into, you're into cryptocurrency, or there's how about a blockchain where the artist owns their material?
Yeah.
And every time a user comes in and listens to, it's tracking that, right?
Right.
And they're getting paid themselves. It's a there's no centralized silo of someone like Spotify controlling the volume of the monetary flow. It's all going to each individual in that blockchain.
I think it's a brilliant idea. We probably shouldn't put this on the podcast.
Should cut it out.
Should probably cut right here.
No. Listen, I just have crazy business ideas all the time, and I just jot them down. But that's one thing I was thinking about. I was also thinking about from a YouTube perspective.
Yeah.
But just taking all these centralized media services and decentralizing it, and really putting the capitalization of the content creator in the hands of the content creator.
And I think you have a better chance of doing that today than you did yesterday, even. Because a lot of the people who are creating these new music and who are producing their own stuff understand blockchain technology. They understand cryptocurrency market. They understand where things are going technologically, where I think you still obviously have a lot of people, and rightfully so, there's still a lot of money to be made in the old way of doing things.
Sure.
It's until people start to see, oh, hey, I'm missing out on something big. Like the Bitcoin run last year, I think opened a lot of people's eyes to go, wait a minute, this is not just somebody behind a computer sort of thing. Like, there's legitimate money in this.
Yeah.
And, and we've seen it, obviously, I was noticing a couple weeks ago, like, as the stock market takes a nosedive, like, I feel like money's like coming out of here
a little bit
and going into the crypto market.
I definitely think there's a transfer of wealth happening.
Yeah.
Now,
I feel like this is another conversation.
I told him this a while ago. Yeah, I was like, because I feel like it just makes sense. The people that stocks have been around forever. Cryptocurrency is a new thing. They're not penny stocks. Some of them are, but they're not a lot of money, but just a little bit. I mean, if you take 1% of the stock market and just shift it over to cryptos, they 5x.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah.
But, recently the Floyd Mayweather, and I don't think it was Kanye, but maybe DJ Khaled or someone, they were endorsing a cryptocurrency or an ICO that ended up being illegal or fraudulent or is under SEC investigation. But I don't know if I necessarily... Paris Hilton had a coin too. But I don't think it's going to move into... it's hard to think about this, but does... Brad Paisley put out the Brad Paisley coin, or how does that work? Do you create a music blockchain and the cryptocurrency that's traded within?
It's just gonna be up for you to decide, man. You have to build it. I mean, that's your job.
I don't have time to build.
I think you could actually do the model kind of. The idea, I think, would be something like what Coinbase and a couple of the other ones do, is where you have a centralized location that people can come and consume and trade and do all of that stuff. I think if it was kind of for the user to kind of find and figure out, I think it'll be a lot slower to adopt. I think that's why you've seen, obviously, cryptos too, like with Binance and Coinbase. There's now an easy way to get into the crypto market as to where before, I think it was very mysterious for a lot of people.
A lot more.
I think the same would go true to if you did that. You need to make it a way that's user-friendly, that they go, this feels like Spotify, but it feels different because I'm literally paying the artist directly. My money's not going somewhere else, but it feels like I can show up and see everything that I want to work with. And
you bring up a good point. It's just like, I'm going to try and analogize this as best as I can, but you can go into an amusement park But if it was the gates were free, right, and you could just show up, who's running the rides, who's running the concession stands, who's doing all this stuff, you have to have. It's not centralized, but you have to have the gatekeeper who is managing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Who is there for customer service, and someone who's there or a group who's there to make it easy to use, so that as you come into the blockchain, and I don't even think people are gonna it's just like the internet. They're not even gonna know it's operating on a blockchain.
No.
But it will be.
Yep.
But I think you need that centralized group or the advocate for that blockchain to be there for that customer support or to make it easy for one to use. Yeah. But to make sure, instead of it being 90-10, 90% going to Spotify, 10 going to the artist, it should be a 90-10 artist to whoever that
gatekeeper is.
Gatekeepers,
I think it's actually a really great idea. I think it's just figuring out how to communicate that to the customer is the biggest thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's always been the biggest challenge. I think when you are transferring technology, we talked about 8-track cassette to CD to MP3 player. There's a reason why there are still people who have CDs and listen to them in their car because for some reason or another they never connected on that level.
Yeah.
But as a whole, I would say as a society and the people who created that technology, they did a really good job in communicating it and making it easy because now I would say the vast majority of people listen to music through their phone, like on their iPhone or whatever their smartphone is.
Shit, I'm still trying to figure out how Spotify works. To know the exact ins and outs and how the whole thing works.
The algorithms and
I don't know how. It's foreign to me.
There's a lot.
I can click on a song, search on a song. Okay, great, I got it.
Yeah.
But as far as creating playlists and doing all this more sophisticated stuff, the algorithms, the back end, more the coding in the whole app, it's insane.
Yeah.
So how can you? I think the simpler the better. It's always going to be that takes the cake. If it's if my mom and dad can use it, that's why look at Steve Jobs, iPhone, something that's easy to use. The apps. You look at Android and how that system works versus iOS. Why do you think Apple's such a front runner? It's simple to use.
Right.
So question: what's the point right now of record labels? What do they do?
That's a really good question.
Because I'm looking around I'm dumb, dude. Are they marketers? Do they just market? They give them cash and go, hey, we'll help you promote your first record or your tour?
Yeah, I think that goes back to a little bit to the old boy network that we talked about. For a lot of record labels, they're still the gatekeeper of radio, of distribution for actual hard sell distribution. They're also the ones that go and negotiate big contracts with the digital marketplaces. I know that was a big thing, like Sony and a couple of other record labels with iTunes. When they negotiated those deals, they could negotiate different rates for what their artists get. So But
shouldn't the manager do that?
Well, the manager, there's another level. It's like you got somebody up here who's negotiating the large contract, and then when it comes down to the individual artists, then managers are responsible for that individual artist. So again, we'll go back to this. So let's just say that take $1. That's an easy thing. Yeah. So let's say the record label says, well, we're going to get 50 cents off of this $1. The whole record label, all the dollars that come in from Spotify, we get to keep 50 cents of it, and 50 cents goes back to Spotify. Then we're going to distribute out to all our artist pool based on what they actually turn over in plays, but each of them have a different rate based on what we negotiate in that tier. But they wouldn't even have the leverage to go to a Spotify if I'm a fledgling artist that just got signed to a record label. I don't really have a lot of traction, so I might get the bare minimum. But maybe with a record label, I might get 2 or 3 more cents. I might get something a little different because of that negotiation tactic.
How is that going to change in the future? Because I see that industry is ready to just get ripped apart.
Well, I think it goes to this idea, the notion of the decentralization, that the idea that you pay someone else essentially a middleman fee to broker something for you that if you just had the access, you could do yourself.
Correct.
Right.
The problem is access, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, having a young and up-and-coming artist, they're not going to have the executives at Apple to go over there and, hey, I want 50 cents on a dollar, You have a credible group, I mean, middleman connections. But I feel like it will dissipate the more those. But you have to have those solutions out there or another alternate for them to execute on, which you're seeing a little bit of, like SoundCloud, but something like that.
I would say the more you see in like live revenue side, the less power record labels have. And the reason why is because that money doesn't go back to the record label.
Right.
Live revenue and anything that happens in a live show, for the most part, goes directly back to the artist and the management side. It's the recorded stuff. It's stuff that gets sold in stores, stuff that gets sold online. It's the actual recorded product that the record labels are actually making money off of. So I think that's where you're going to see some of that shift, is when people start to realize that there are different forms of making money, and there's different avenues that I don't necessarily have to have the same path that someone else had. And again, you see it with people who they can make $1 million off of YouTube because they have so many views, and YouTube's willing to pay them money because they have a crazy amount of views, and they have nobody representing them.
Right. And I think, like these up and coming content creators, whether they're songwriters, singers, comedians, magicians, guitar players for a certain band,
ventriloquists, dancers. I'm just going down the line,
Still an art form.
I think it's a business. You are a business, and you have to understand business in order to create. You have to have multiple revenue streams. Where are you going to cut your costs? What's going to be the most efficient for you? How can you expand the quickest? Those are all things you have to think about. So I always like to ask when we're interviewing someone, we've talked about where your industry was, where it moved into. Where do you think it's going? And I know we hit on it a little bit, but I guess more on the from the performing side and then the recording side. You said it's transformed into more of a performance and entertainment.
Yeah.
Is it totally going to keep going down that way, or are we going to see the paradigm shift back where it's going to be the content, or how do you foresee this playing out in the future?
I'm a firm believer that most everything that happens, that we do in life, whatever we're doing, there's cycles, right? Like things just ebb and flow. We see it in fashion, we see it art, we see it food trends, everything. It all comes and goes and circles back around. I think what you're going to see probably is you're going to see a harder push even in the performing technology side of things. I think that's going to be a big push, again, because we're embracing the newness of that. I think at some point you're going to see probably that become simplified at some point, mainly because you're going to have, I think, people are going to have different access now. So you're going to, and we've seen it a little bit already, that people are live streaming things, so people aren't going to shows now because they can actually just stay at home and see a stream, right? Now, it still happens because, to be honest with you, like, you can't replace a live crowd.
No,
like
for sure.
Like the energy and the emotion
that's cool
of anything. Events, concerts. I mean, there's something about it. I mean, that's why corporations spend millions, probably billions of dollars each year for like these live corporate things that they do with their employees, with people, just because there's something about getting everybody together and being a part of something. So I think that's going to be a really difficult thing to replace. I do think that it will morph, though, into there's going to be a little bit more of a more intimate experience, maybe, that becomes more popular, that you pay a more premium ticket for, because access is really important to people.
Yeah.
Like, that's actually a big thing. Versus where maybe there's a user, I don't really care if I'm from here to there to Justin Timberlake. I'm fine with just watching it online and hearing it and seeing the cool stuff.
And I think there is a sense of like community behind certain people. Some groups and some artists have like a cult like following, and you're going there not only to see the performance, but to be with fellow people like yourself. So that culture, if you're creating that culture, that's definitely, that makes sense to me too now. Yeah. So like, again, we have the content creation, the entertainment, but then if you're creating that brand that is, you're bringing them in, that's huge. Yeah. That's huge. Oh man, I had a.
So how's the live experience changed then? I guess would be my like the actual experience itself. So are they going to have floors that move up and down? Are they going to be in like pools? Are they going to have like glasses that they wear or sensory jackets that make it colder or hotter? Like how is the live experience going to change?
I think that's an interesting question. There's been experiments with that already. I know there's been a couple different times like where there's a concert literally like everybody puts on a set of headphones and like they're all
a silent disco.
Yeah,
I've been to one of those.
Like
it's weird because you're like this and it's like everyone's listening to the same thing and it's everyone's dancing, but then you take them off and it's quiet and you're like, what the hell? This is weird.
But I honestly think this is a much deeper discussion. But I think until like we kind of in some way as humans evolve biologically, I think there's only so much sensory overload that we can actually even process. Like that's actually science.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of that goes into the live stuff, like what you can actually hear. There's a whole science by like the spectrum I can actually hear and what you can hear when you go to a live show.
Yeah.
So there's some limitations, and I think there's some things that are going to probably limit a little bit of how much is too much, because people are just I stop experiencing and actually enjoying it, and it just becomes overload, and now I'm just kind of like inundated with stuff.
Sure.
Again, great set. You're just lining them up, and these segues are coming in. But all right, so let's talk about EDM and just a guy up there at a booth going and hitting buttons.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking it at all. It's talented, and I enjoy some of that music. But there's just a sea of people, and there's these festivals.
Yeah.
But he's a content creator with a computer in front of him.
Right.
Not really singing, just mixing shit and clicking buttons and just having that knack to hear and put these things together. But, no shit, I forgot my question.
I'll say, what was your question about that? I mean, what's the next big... So EDM really, I wouldn't say it took off. It was always kind of like in a nice trajectory. But what's a genre of music that you're like, keep your eyes on this one? Like, is it yodeling? I mean, is it yodeling? It could be.
Oh man, that's a hard question because for me personally,
that's the magic question.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard for me because we consume so much of this stuff, and it's you kind of like it becomes noise sometimes after a while because you hear so much of it and you're a part of some of it. I don't know. I think I'll go back to maybe what your question was a little bit, but I think EDM, there was something there that people just connected with, and I think there was a certain age group, a certain person that connected for whatever reason with a guy who's 17, 18 years old who is just creating because he feels something. There's some sort of emotion, there's some sort of thing that's triggering that, and I think everybody out there is a representation of that.
Yeah.
And so, which is, it's crazy to think about, but I mean, realistically, that's what we're all motivated about. We don't do something unless we innately feel there's a need to or a want to.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably what you see there. So I think, to answer your question...
You answered my question. I didn't even ask.
Yeah, there you go.
Man, that's good.
Maybe to like sidestep your question a little bit, because I don't have a really good answer for that.
Sure.
I think what you're really going to see is people who are continually able to connect with audiences, who are able to connect with... And it could be, 30 to 40-year-old working moms that someone just kind of comes up and goes... Man, I really hit this niche really well, and they're just consuming, right?
Yeah.
Like 40-year-old moms.
I don't know.
What a great niche to have.
That's a phenomenal
Hey, listen, they have a lot of money, and they spend it, right?
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
And so I think that's what you'll see that, and think of your favorite artists. Like they strike some sort of, no pun intended, chord with you that you go, man, there's a reason why you buy their stuff. There's a reason why that you would be willing to go to a concert that they're putting on. And the reason is because they created some sort of impact or some sort of change that you want to be a part of in a different way.
What an awesome answer.
Yeah.
To a question that wasn't even asked.
That's right. I know.
But how about the Fry Festival? They're putting out a documentary about that?
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That was something I just wanted to bring that up. Have you heard of the Fry Festival?
Nope, no idea.
Oh, dude, it was this marketed festival in like Exuma or something. And I don't know how much money. It was like the biggest fraudulent thing in the world because people started showing up to the island for this all-weekend music festival. There's no artists there. There's no people there. It's like, what the fuck's going on?
Yep.
There was like box lunches.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow.
There was an artist who was behind that, and I can't remember who the artist that had money behind that. I don't remember.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was a pretty big artist, and I'm trying to remember. I'll probably remember after we're done filming.
Dude.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's essentially like that was what happened. People showed up, and there was nothing there.
Wow.
Like literally like nothing.
That is wild.
Yeah.
That is wild. Last question for you then.
I have one more too. All right, so briefly touched on it, but you talked about live streaming, right? So,
I knew you'd want to ask that. Your eyes lit up when you said live streaming.
well, listen, you have you have all these sporting events, which is entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yep.
But have you heard of Twitch?
Like the dancer Twitch?
No, Twitch is a
He is a dancer. Yeah.
Twitch is a live streaming application
Okay.
where you can live stream, but people can donate money.
Okay.
It's huge.
It's getting huge, and it got huge because of video gaming. So like you'd sit there and video game, screen share what you're doing,
Gotcha.
and people are donating. So like
That's
if you get a
huge.
kill, people are donating. But why not transform that over into? You're gonna have the big guys on ABC, NBC, and stuff like that. But how about these mid-level guys? Open up a Twitch account, get a few cameras, start shooting your concerts, and you can. I don't know how much revenue you can generate from that, from donations. But I mean, hell,
I think it's a great idea. I think you shouldn't film
I
this.
know.
You keep having these great ideas.
These are all proprietary ideas.
Yeah, proprietary.
Can you like copyright this?
Yeah.
I think the hard part when we get to that sort of stuff is, again, I keep coming back to this, is there's a human element. Like there are certain things that I think that we can replace and use technology for, and we're okay with, right? But then I think there are some other things that you just can't get the same thing, the same experience,
Totally.
right? Like we're Nashville people, like the Nashville Predators, like you watch those games on TV, and it's cool. You can kind of feel it, and you can get excited. But if you've ever been in Bridgestone when that crowd is rocking, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
And so, I to your point, I think that there's some money to be made in that side of things.
I think there's
because there's a larger group that you're the live side you can only target maybe 5, 10, 20,000 people.
Yeah.
But with the streaming you can do unlimited.
Yeah.
right. And I'm not and listen, I'm not saying it's a huge land grab where you can go revolutionize the media industry or anything like that. I'm just saying, listen, if you're an artist
Just some pie crumbles.
I mean, why not?
Yeah.
Just
Almost some
make
crumbs.
Make a couple tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just live streaming your shows.
Yeah.
Here's a movie quote for you. Tell me if you know this movie. Dude, I love crumbs. I live off crumbs.
I don't know.
War Dogs. Remember that?
I've never seen that movie.
You never seen War Dogs?
No.
Wow, it's a
What's
great
it
movie.
about?
It's about the guy who does the they do war contracts pretty much.
Shit.
And they privatize them, and so people can
For guns?
yeah.
Oh, I think I did see that movie.
It's the
Crazy.
anyway, that was a great movie.
Arms dealers.
You're talking about like the mid-level people. I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, the Twitch people are doing Twitch now like bodybuilders. They're just weightlifting, and they're getting paid to. People are paying people to watch people weightlifting.
Listen, Josh, you got artists. Here's what we can do.
Boom.
We'll go file.
He's the gatekeeper.
We'll go file something real quick, and I'll just come in and consult. And you got the cameras. I'll do the consulting. We're good to go.
There you go.
Boom.
Gatekeeper.
So yeah, that's right. That's right. So one of my last questions was, what was the best concert experience you've ever been to then?
Oh man, that's
Or at least top 3.
I'll go top. I'll just go top 1 because I mean
That would be your best then.
Yeah, it's my best. I'll go top 1.
Top one.
You said top 1
is your favorite.
You said top 3, so I was like, your favorite top 3.
Yeah.
I'll go top 1.
I love that. That's my new favorite phrase, by the way. That's my new favorite phrase.
Funny enough, I'm obviously
Katy Perry.
No.
I thought you said
No. I do production and stuff, and that's what I'm in day to day.
Yeah.
But my favorite show was a show that I saw at the Station Inn, which is downtown Nashville, like really small.
Yeah.
Right there.
Where's the Station Inn at?
It's in the Gulch.
Okay. Is it new?
No. It's like real old. It's like real small.
Okay.
Sort of setup. And Chris Stapleton had a former bluegrass band called the Steel Drivers, and they played there on a regular basis. And I think like cover was like $5 or $10 or something.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but it was just that. I'll give you two. That, and then there's a band called the Ava Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them.
I've heard of them.
When I was in college, the Ava Brothers were just kicking off, and like again, no big deal. In college, a bunch of friends went to the show at like this small bar in North Carolina.
That's awesome.
And it was like $5 cover, and we'd never heard of them, and they just like sweating, like just killing it, and everybody in the room, it's a hot room, but everybody knows the songs, everybody's singing, everybody's just going crazy. And I think for me, that really got the bug for me for live music because I didn't even know, at that time in my life, I didn't know anything about like video or lighting. All I knew was that live experience was something that I wanted to be able to share with whoever I was kind of working with. And I felt like that was something that was needed. So those really stick out for me. Again, not from the performance side.
No, exactly. That's the link. That's what that creates the link, creates that future endeavor.
To get involved in the grassroots or in the organic startup phases of anything is so cool to see because then you can see it blossom. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I love it, man.
Dude, what a great interview. Yeah. You flowed very nice.
Flow like a butterfly.
I think that we have some exciting things ahead of us. I'm talking about us here.
Yeah, that's right.
But everyone combined in the music industry, awesome conversation. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do it again.
Yep.
We'll do it again.
Sounds good.
Folks from around the world, patrons of the IR4 podcast, thanks for your support. You are absolutely fantastic, stupendously stupendous, and we will see you later. And until next time, love, live, learn. You guys rock. Bye.